The Joseph Saga Part 2. Remember what a saga is? It's a story, usually a long story, and Joseph had, this is going to be a long story. But don't worry, we're not going to keep you overtime today. We're breaking it down into parts. So. Okay, well, let's see. Let's catch up with what's been happening, shall we? First of all, poor Joseph was born into a very dysfunctional family. His father Jacob had 4 wives, but not like we tend to do today where you have one and they die off or you divorce them and you marry again. He had all 4 at once. He had how many brothers? Anybody remember how many brothers he had? 9. 11. 11, right? Okay. And how many sisters that we know of? 1. Okay. So here we are in this family, and his brothers just loved him to pieces, right? Well, they wanted to tear him to pieces. They did not like him at all. In fact, they decided that they would probably kill him. They wanted to kill him. And that was their plan. His father had shown tremendous favoritism toward him because he was the firstborn son of the woman that he really seemed to love, the one he liked best. And they were all jealous. And he was a bragger, to be real honest. He'd had some dreams, and he'd told them what the dreams were. And it really upset them because they were about bowing down to him. And so they planned on killing him, but one of his brothers said, no, let's just throw him in this cistern. And with the idea that he was going to come back and save him, because he said, he's our flesh and blood. You know, we shouldn't just go off and kill him. But his brother went off somewhere, the one that wanted to come back and save him, and the rest of them, some traders came by and they said, we'll sell him to them. And they took him to Egypt. He was in Egypt. He was sold to a man by the name of Potiphar. And Potiphar was a guard, pretty high up in the government, really liked Joseph. And so what did he do? Promoted him, said, you have the run of everything pretty much. But there was a little oil in the ointment, wasn't there? Potiphar's wife. And she kept on wanting him to sleep with her. And he kept on saying no. And finally one day she asked him, and he fled, ran away. But she grabbed his coat, and then she lied to her husband about it and said that he'd tried to seduce her and all this stuff. And so he threw him in prison. And so here he was in prison. But it was bad to be in prison, but at least he had been given a position of authority in prison. They decided this man's pretty smart. So he had other prisoners under him. And 2 of the prisoners, one was a cupbearer for Pharaoh, who had gotten in trouble somehow, and Pharaoh had thrown, and the other was the baker. And they had dreams. And they told Joseph about this. And the dreams came true. And he asked the cupbearer, who was the one that was released, the other one was hanged, he said, please, let them know that what I've done for you. And did he do it? No. And this is where we are today. Okay, Debbie, I'm going to ask you to come up. So here's Joseph, still in prison. And what does it say in verse 1 of chapter 41? It says, when 2 full years had passed. So it was another 2 years before anything happened in Joseph's life. Pharaoh had a dream. And he asked the magicians and the wise men to interpret his dream. Were they able to do that, Debbie?
No, they were not.
They were not able to do that. And finally, the cupbearer went to Pharaoh and said, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servant, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker of the house, the captain of the guard." And he said, "Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them for us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was hanged." So how do you think the cupbearer felt at this time?
I felt a little ashamed because he forgot.
Okay, he was a little ashamed. And what did Pharaoh do at this time then?
Called Joseph in to interpret the dream.
Okay, he asked Joseph in, and then he told Joseph what the dream was. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." And what was Joseph's reply to that?
Not himself, but it comes from God.
Okay. Joseph was pretty wise, wasn't he? He'd kind of gotten over the fact that he was bragging about things, didn't he? He realized that God was the one that was in charge, and God could be the one that could interpret the dream. Okay, and so this is what the dream was about. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile, when out of the river there came up 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows came up, scrawny and very ugly and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first. But even after they ate them, no one could tell that they had done so. They looked just as ugly as before. And then I woke up. In my dreams, I also saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads sprouted, withered and thin, and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain it to me." And what did Joseph say that the dreams of Pharaoh meant?
That have 7 years of prosperity and then 7 years of famine, and that they should save during the years of prosperity so they could get through the years of famine.
Okay, so he was able to, and did the dreams mean the same thing?
Yes.
Okay, there were 2 dreams, but they meant the same thing. And why did he say they meant the same thing? Do you remember that?
You got me on that one.
Okay, verse 32 says, "The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and that God will do it soon." So he really wanted to emphasize to Pharaoh, hey, listen, this is serious business here. Okay, how could we apply any of this to today?
Knowing that as long as we trust in God, He's got this, and He'll get us through. Might not always be easy, and it might not always be fun, but if we follow Him, He will get us through anything.
Okay. All right, thank you, Debbie. All right, so now we've had the dream interpreted. Pharaoh said, go back to prison, right?
No, he did not.
Okay. So it goes on here. Now we're in verse 33. And it says, and now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of those good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. What did the Pharaoh think about that idea?
He was obedient to it. He went ahead and got the commissioners, and then the commissioners and he decided that who would be better to be put in charge than Joseph, who knew the dream was given to him. So they went ahead and he put Joseph in charge as commissioner to make sure that he would oversee what was going on. The commissioners were obedient because they went ahead and they gathered the 5% of grain they were supposed to. And then Joseph was obedient because he went out into the whole land of Jesus, or Egypt. I'll get it, yeah. I'm sorry. Anyway, and make sure that it was all stored like it should be.
Okay. You mean that Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, the whole country, this great country of Egypt, he actually took somebody that was a Hebrew, had been a slave, had been a prisoner, and put him in charge of all this?
He put him in charge of everything.
My goodness. And the officials agreed with him?
Yes, they did.
Wow. I wonder if we would do something like that today. So he was put in charge. We're told here, it says that Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in a chariot as the second in command. And men shouted before him, make way. Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. See, Hebrews weren't considered very important Egyptians. And you'll find that out a little bit later, how much they didn't even want them to eat. They didn't even like to eat together. But here Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's reason for this was, he said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no other so discerning and wise as you. In the NIV, it has a little note down at the bottom where it says, the God. Because I don't think Pharaoh was a believer in one God. Particularly, in fact, he was supposed to be a God himself. But the point was that he realized Joseph was something very special. God, or the gods, his God anyway, was in control of this thing. And so he went ahead and did this. Then he did something else to Joseph. He said, I'm Pharaoh, and I will be with you without your word. No one will lift his hand or foot in all of Egypt. And then Pharaoh gave Joseph a wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt, doing what Pharaoh had asked him to do. God pointed out that they should do. What do we learn from this today? Do you think from this little section of Scripture?
Well, yeah, we keep our focus straight on God, instead of man or man's plans or their thoughts or what they feel. If all Christians would stand up together and just totally put their focus on God, miraculous things could happen. Things that we couldn't even imagine.
And Pharaoh and the commissioners were willing to put their trust in someone that wasn't necessarily considered important today, or in that day and age. Would we be willing to do that if someone came and shared and really showed that they were from God? Would we be open to that? It's something that we need to think about. Okay. Thank you very much. How old was Joseph when all of this happened? And he started the service of Pharaoh?
Well, you didn't give me that question.
I didn't give you that question. Okay.
I'm not sure how old. He wasn't very old.
He was 30 years old. Scripture tells us. And he went out from Pharaoh's presence. He traveled throughout Egypt. So during the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentiful. And Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city, he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. And Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. And it says, before those years of famine came, 2 sons were born to him. And you remember who they were?
You didn't give me that question either. You're on the wrong script.
Manasseh, and it was the first one, and he said it was because God had made me forget all my troubles and all my father's household. There he was, been sold into slavery, and he said, "No, I've been blessed." It sounds like he's kind of taken on the Egyptian way of life. He's an authority. He has an Egyptian wife. He has 2 children. The second one was named Heman. He said it is because God has made me fruitful in the land of suffering. Hey, what happened after the 7 years of abundance?
There were 7 years of famine.
Okay, 7 rough years. And what did Pharaoh do about that? Was he upset? Do you think he made a bad mistake? Letting Joseph be in charge?
Yes, he was very upset. They were, because they had 7 years of plentiful food, and then all of a sudden they had nothing.
Okay, they had nothing. He continued to put his trust in Joseph. He said, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you." Instead of our complaining whether we like it or not, I mean, it's not good, but what I want you to do is to go to Joseph and do what he tells you. And when the time had come, when famine had come, and these 7 years, it said Joseph did something. What did Joseph do?
He was put in charge over all that Pharaoh had, and he turned things around.
Okay, turn things around. He opened up the storehouses, sold the grain to the Egyptians because it was severe throughout all Egypt. And all the countries came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph. because the famine was severe in all the world, in all the area around it, all the world at that time. And so here he was with all of these, he was in charge. Did Joseph get a big head over this?
No.
No, he didn't. He continued to put his trust in what? Who did he trust?
God.
He trusted God. Pharaoh had the good sense to put his trust in Joseph because he realized that what he was doing was right. What he had done to the country and doing the same. Alrighty, what should we learn from that section of scripture today?
As we put God first, He will guide us and direct our paths and bless us.
Good. Thank you. From a prisoner to the number 2 guy in the country. That's pretty great, isn't it? He can do it on his own. Put his trust in God. The song, Have Thine Own Way, Lord. Joseph went through a lot. Instead of bitterly complaining about it, he said, Have Thine Own Way, Lord. I'm sure he had some doubts. He had some times wondering, why in the world did that stupid cup there say something before 2 years were over? That's a long time. But yet he still when it came time for him to get out of prison, had the opportunity, instead of taking the glory for himself, he gave the glory to him. He said, I can't do these things. Using me as a system. What about us today? Do we have God have are we open to His leading? We truly say, it doesn't belong now, I know we will. You're the potter. Will we like God and the rest? Will we like to hold ourselves? These are lessons that we can learn. Okay, children, come